Welcome to First Answers. This is episode 18 in the series, Parent Leadership for 21st-Century Children. When your children become young adults, it can be one of the best times for your family if you've prepared them well. Learn what to do to successfully prepare your children by creating a family forum to accommodate children who leave, then return, then leave again. Remember, freedom is more influential than control. Visit firstanswers.com to find more about the podcast and tons of resources for families and mental health.
In the last episode, having to do with young adults, I talked about the signs of independent children who love, respect, and honor their parents. Some of the indications of children during adolescence which indicate that they're not going to be successful or as successful as young adults. And today I want to, in this episode, talk about the type of family form that is useful to deal with adults, children, and maintain a positive relationship and exert some influence. So to begin with, let's review the signs of independent children who love, respect, and honor their parents. Personal control, where children freely make the majority of their own decisions and have some emotional control as well, and therefore are not given to addictive behavior or dependent behavior. Number 2 is financial independence. Number 3 is separate residence, longer amounts of time between physical contact between children and parents, a network of friends and acquaintances who have replaced the family as the center of life, some broken ties where children choose to be with other people during some traditional family times, such as holidays. There's also evidence of an emotional separation, which means they no longer feel totally at peace with being home instead of where they live and who they live with. That's an interesting time. I can remember where, having visited my family during a holiday, going back to the home that my wife and I had established with our children, I realized that I preferred being there, and it made me feel kind of sad to begin with. And then as I thought about it, I thought, no, it's exactly what my parents want. Another indication of successful young adult life is significant personal achievement. Could be any. Could be some accomplishment on their own, graduating from college, getting married, achieving at work, etc. Number 9, communicate fairly frequently with parents. Send messages of love and warmth and desire to spend time socially with them. That's interesting because quite often parents and adult children will go for long periods of time and not communicate, and then they're afraid to initiate because they don't want to intrude, and etc. My experience is that if it's not too frequently and too demanding, good, honest, fairly frequent communication is a very good thing for both parties. Number 10 and last, successful, independent adult children participate in family activities when possible, and they enjoy reunions with other family members and often really enjoy their siblings and spend times, even set up a little like a Zoom meeting or something else with their siblings so that they can carry on and have time with their brothers and sisters. Now I want to review the signs or indications that adolescents will yield, which suggest that they might be unprepared for adulthood. And if they are, then the parents are going to be in a form of a more dependent kind of relationship for the next period of time. The reason for doing this is that there's some evidence that there are more and more adolescent children who are less and less well prepared. And so parents are having to take care of them. And even when they marry, for example, and have children, quite often the children's marriages don't succeed. They come and live home. The grandparents end up taking care of a child while the parent works. And that seems to be okay, and living with grandparents is okay. It used to be viewed as a real negative, meaning that in our society there was some form of negative reflection on the young adults and the parents, but no longer. Now, the reason this is no longer a negative reflection is not only that there are more people involved in it, But more and more families are being affected by the inflationary economy, by the changing and movement in jobs, where jobs are more unstable than they used to be, generally speaking, and where there are a lot of transitions that are going on of a variety of types between people and their friends and their acquaintances and so on. So these 6 things are what researchers tell us we should look for as parents to see whether or not we need to improve the effectiveness of preparing our adolescent children so they can become successful adults. First, children tend to find ways to continue to rely on their parents way past the time it is appropriate. They might have spurious health problems, overspending, and a lack of financial control, emotional problems, which are hard to solve and often seen undiagnosable. Now, think that through with me. See, these are signs adolescent children are showing, and if you're seeing them, it means, wow, then I have work to do as a parent to help my kids get ready for those 10 indications of what an independent young adult is like. Number 2, some adolescents stop functioning at age 16 or 17 for no apparent reason. They won't go to school and often remove themselves from social contact and appear to have little self-motivation, often inflicted with high degrees of anxiety that they use to explain laziness and a lack of motivation. This is a fairly significant thing. Some people say, well, the kids will grow out of that. And my experience is that most in my experience, partially grow out of that and then retain some part of that over a long period of time. Well, so then what do we do? What do parents do if they see their kids in this situation? Well, it is so significant, in my opinion, because adolescence is called one of these critical periods of life where things that happen or what kids experience can have lasting effects. So you work really hard by contacting other people to help, by beginning to mentor children and say, I'm going to be right here. We'll take a little task and then we'll get better and better as we go along. And general, the message is, I love you, care for you, but it's not acceptable for you to do nothing. And then you can also apply reinforcement ideas and encouragement forms of behavior, but little teeny rewards, not big rewards, but little teeny reinforcements that usually have to do with their feelings or privileges that they like rather than a lot of money or a lot of toys. Then number 3, quite often adolescent children that experience depression and or anxiety, intense anxiety, have difficulty becoming successful adults because these emotions tend to continue over time. Some depressions are reactionary depressions, that's true. But people tend to learn what they experience, and so if children have depressed moods and intense anxiety, they often carry on into adulthood. Professional help, but also involvement, activity, and so on. I tell my patients, you'll be less depressed if you're busy, and you'll be less anxious if you are learning to think optimistically and stop being self-critical and pessimistic. Number 4, adolescents might exhibit dependencies on things like drugs or alcohol, and these are just destructive. There's no way, even children will justify marijuana and say, well, it's not habit forming. Well, it doesn't matter if it's habit forming. Does it affect kids' brains? Yes, it does. And how long does it affect them? A long time if they use a lot. 5, when parents and children experience conflict between them, parents might reject their children or over-control them. Or they might be too helpful, or they might just keep fighting with them over time. Any of those indications are indications that children may be less prepared to be successful, independent adults who, I might add, show honor and respect for their parents. And then 6 and last, children might experience a serious injury or chronic illness, which requires parents to move closer in order to provide care. But then if that happens, parents have to learn to move away so that children have the freedom and the opportunity to progress away from their parents. Now, if you intend to be successful and helpful in promoting the growth and development of your children, And I vote that you work hard at this because it's worth it when you get through with this whole process and your children are independent, they're on their own, and it's a great relief for us as parents, partly because they're doing well and partly because our role as a parent is less and the stress is less for us. So here we go. It is true, in order to create this opportunity, we need a certain kind of family forum. Families with a young adult child are often one of the best family times of all. Children often come and go again, somewhat like an accordion. When they return, they often bring with them new ideas and experiences which can be shared. If you make a tradition to invite returnees to tell about their experiences, you can create a form of ideas, values, and experiences that you can use for your other children as well. Now, quite often, parents want these individuals to follow the same family rules and do chores like they did when they were living at home, but the children do not like that since they've been living away from their parents for the last several months or years. This is a typical college student who lives away from parents. Then they go home and the parents say, okay, we'll fit back into the family. No, they shouldn't. You don't want to misuse the education of your children for the last year. So what you do is say, all right, let's work out something unique or special for you. Parents are worried, shouldn't we treat all kids the same? No, it's a bad idea. You want to treat children uniquely in terms of their stage of life and adapt to them and explain to all the rest of the kids. The younger children will say, well, that's not fair, that's not fair. And you'll say, not your definition of fair, but our definition of fair is helping each child get what they need at the time they need it. It is not treating everybody the same. So this raises the issue of freedom again, and we'll need conversations and mutual support to manage it well, so it doesn't become a source of conflict. It's important to not have conflict with young adult children over freedom, for heaven's sakes. When your children start bringing home friends and then special friends, it will invite you to prepare all of your children for welcoming new people. Your family will be influenced by just how special a friend is. And if a child marries, you will be faced with separation feelings, that your family will never be the same, and you will be right. But you will worry about whether the intended person will be a good match for your child, and also be concerned about your relationship with the new in-law. Now, in my generation, it was left up to us whether or not we decided to marry and who we decided to marry. But in the world in which we live in today, there are an increased number of people who are not well prepared for marriage or for young adolescents. My opinion is that it is wise for parents to get involved just a little more in helping your child gain information about the intended person, family background, and so on, so you can identify any warning signs, because we're seeing an increase in terrible, unhappy marriages in the first 2 or 3 years, which are amazing to me. So the blossoming of love seed no longer lasts for some people, as long as we hope it will. Well, all of these adjustments, combined with the regular task of rearing other children, make this type of family somewhat new, and it literally becomes a form of new experiences. You can face it with a sense of foreboding, or with a sense of adventure, and I propose adventure. I have stood on my doorsteps, figuratively, and wished my children goodbye, hoping they'll be successful. Some traveled off to school, some traveled other places. Fortunately for my wife and me, they all seemed to move back around where we could see them often. I consider that one of the great blessings of my life. Now, I believe that surrounding all of these experiences with a great deal of love makes it somewhat easier in approaching it with a sense of adventure. Regarding the unknown makes it possible for everyone to succeed. Now, please consider the following qualities you can add to your family in order to provide good leadership during this period of time. And also, please note how the 10 impact parental practices that I've described to you early fit nicely into preparing your children to be adults and for you and your children to maintain a very high quality relationship. So here's what you do in your family. I'm proposing. Maintain your schedule of family activities. You might need to adjust a little, But if you can continue, your young adult children will know when to participate. When are we having this activity? When we're having that? This podcast is being recorded the week of Halloween, and our family has a tradition called Apple Uglies, where you get apples, caramelize them, get a variety of kinds of bad candy, and whoever gets to make the ugliest face gets an award. Everybody brings a different kind of soup, and you come and spend an evening. And it's going on now way past the time some of our married grandchildren want to come and be part of Apple Uglies, and we welcome them. It's a wonderful thing. Pressure alienates, free choice welcomes. And you can use this time to assure your other children who might complain that you are wise enough to not treat all of them exactly alike, but will provide each child opportunities when it's their time. Now, this reduces the possibility of creating entitlement feelings where some children make demands of other children and their parents. Number 2, communicate, then wait, and then communicate again. Be patient with communication. If you communicate and your kids don't answer right away, well, don't call them and get angry at them because they're not responding. Or don't get angry at them because they haven't communicated every so often. They have their own lives and they're busy and so on. So I propose that you consider finding informative things to communicate about. Then when you communicate with them, like a family news or something else, if they don't respond, wait a while and then communicate a little more until a rhythm is created acceptable to both. Communication that is demanded or controlled is not real communication at all. Okay, number 3, individualize what you do with your children. I've spoken about that, but it is so important to legitimize that so that all the children understand that if you happen to be giving a gift to a grandchild who's in special need of something, all grandchildren are not going to get that. Hopefully, we'll just help everybody at the time they need it. Number 4 is to emphasize and reinforce success. Reinforce the idea that loving each other is the most important part of your relationship and communicate it often. But also find ways to communicate with your children and grandchildren how excited you are for anything they do that's positive and successful. I have, my wife and I have family group meetings, and I've asked them every month or two to take a minute and say, here's something that's positive that happened to me, or this is something I've achieved, or this is something fun I'm participating in. So we take a moment and talk about these good things. Number 5, reframe old, bad experiences into something more positive or at least neutral. Well, both parents and children have to decide that they aren't going to carry around either the emotions or the memories of past unhappinesses if they exist. So one nice thing to do is say, well, we learned a lot because of that. That's a reframing. And I've learned to love better, or I've learned personal skills because of it. Therefore, if these negative experiences exist, meet and resolve the matter by agreeing to focus on other more current and positive things. Next, I'd like to talk just a little bit about family work and rules. As you know, you can invite any child to help out when they're at home, but hopefully your young adult children will have lives filled with good things for them. And if they are living at home, then unless a child is defiant or lacks self-control, communicate your desire to have them help out by asking to do some of the work and so on, and follow some of the guidelines like their language, some of their social behavior, so that it doesn't get involved in your family and other kids see examples you don't like. Hopefully, the best thing to do is just invite your adult children to participate with you from time to time. I know some parents who require their kids to come every weekend or make demands on them, like every weekend and so on. In my case, I do that sparingly because I want them to feel free to come and free not to come and benefit from their help. Lastly, I would like to talk about something called thresholds. A threshold is a step in time. It involves looking out into the world and seeing where one wants to go and then taking steps to get there. It's like an old idea is that they walk out on their porch and they look out and there's a big meadow out there and they know that they can build their home, but they also know that if they walk off the porch, it won't be the same ever again. And so they have to learn to take that step. Now, for many children, there are specific thresholds like going away to college, getting married, getting their own apartments, developing their own set of beliefs and values, and so on. I've learned that many parents relive their lives through their children, and I have only found this to be trouble when parents want to redo their bad memories or failures and try to find success through their children. This unfairly burdens kids and gives them, makes bad memories live. It's useful to remember that for them, when they cross the family threshold, they're entering into a world that is new for them, and while they can use support, they still want and need to do it themselves. And if you can be a good spectator and a minimal partner, then they can cross the thresholds of their lives and become all or mostly what you hope they will become. But it has to do with the idea that freedom is actually more influential than control and pressure. So I hope you create opportunities to reward the thresholds, share in the experience of them, and enjoy your young adult children.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the First Answers podcast, which is sponsored by firstanswers.com, where you can find new tools for families and parents of 21st century kids, with a focus on emotional self-reliance. Find First Answers on Facebook, and remember to subscribe to stay up to date with new episodes. Give us a rating and write a review on the Podcasts app or Google Podcasts, and let us know what you think about First Answers. Check out another podcast by Dr. Scoresby called The Christ Questions, which is centered on questions we ask about Jesus Christ and questions he asks us. Dr. Scoresby examines how Christians can build faith in Jesus Christ that lasts and discover the true blessings and rewards for believing.